remember correctly too, you did some work with JayZ on Kingdom Come. So
Yeah.
so the interesting thing to me about that is obviously JayZ is one of the best rappers of all time. He's one of the most successful rappers, all these different things. But that album in particular is not one of his more revered projects. So
Yeah.
in the midst of making that and then the release of it, the rollout of it, and all those
Mhm.
different things, you've got Destiny's Child, you got Lauryn Hill, you got all these huge, massively, universally loved, acclaimed things, stuff you did with Game, Eminem, all these things. So when Kanye, etc. So when you are with a huge artist and you see that it doesn't get that reception, how does that affect the artist? How does it affect you? How does it affect what you do next?
I don't think we ever, I don't even think we ever worried about it. Obviously, I think there's two things. The reason, when that album came back, it's like that's like JayZ coming back to the music game, right? Because he kind of like, the Black Album was like, all right, I'm retiring, I'm going back, and then I'm coming back. So then I'm coming back, and him and Dre talked about, at the time there was talk about doing a joint album called Thriller, but Thriller with an A. Um, so there's talk about doing this, a Dr. Dre, JayZ, joint album, and then that's just conversation, and then it's like, well, right now, all right, I'm coming back and I'm working on an album, but it wasn't like they really locked in terms of making an album. They locked in on the making the song, so it's a different process, and I think you know it's kind of like Kanye and Nas working on that project they did. You know what I mean? Obviously, right after that, um, Hit Boy does the next Nas project and it gets critical acclaim. I think had Kanye and Nas really spent some time hanging out with each other in Wyoming and getting to know each other, but they didn't have that kind of like that same, I think you have to do the dance of that really getting that form, because you can hear it on like how if you look at Pusha T's Daytona, which Kanye produced the majority of, or all of it, there were, I mean, other people contributed, but it's pretty much Kanye production. You see how sonically tight that project is, and that's because of the nature of how tight Pusha and Pusha and Kanye were. I think if Kanye and Nas had kept, really formulating that relationship in terms of the musical side of it, you would have gotten a classic album, like, and going back to the same thing with Dre and Jay, they were getting in, but they weren't. They were just putting toes in the water. You know what I mean? I think had they gotten all the way in the water together, and even then, I'm still a music person when it comes to press and play. I can press play on those songs and still be proud of them because they're not, you know, one of the songs on the record is one of my favorite records. The one, a JayZ song I really like. So,
Which one is that?
I have to look at the record to tell you what's the name of it.
Okay.
I'm getting old. A lot of records. But I'll tell you, we can keep going. I'll find it and I'll tell you which one.
But as all this being said, how do you also kind of balance
Trouble?
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Speaking of Hans synth, that's the Hans synth, the high pitched synth there, which a lot of people end up trying to emulate that sound later on in other records. I started hearing that sound in a lot of records after that record. So they can thank me later for that.
Yes. Now with Dre in particular, I've heard dozens, if not more, songs that haven't come out, that will never come out, etc. And yeah. No, I'm saying me on the outside, I've heard that much. So I know but my question to you is, how do you balance the creation and putting it out there and putting emotion and time and energy and all this stuff? And then not just with Dre, because you've done it with other people, but when it doesn't come out or the album gets shelved or you work, even if you're A&Ring and something gets, shelved or what have you, how do you balance and not let that?
I don't worry about it. I've never worried about it. I've never been a person that's like tried to like dwell on things I can't control. You know what I mean? I've always been good at just letting something go. I mean, you as a music producer, especially things that you really like, the things that you think are at a level that they should come out, you want them to come out. I've always been worried. I've always been more concerned with making artifacts, making things that are here to stay than just getting a placement, or obviously, as a career, you do things for economics sometimes, but for the most part, I've always strived to try to make artifacts, things that I'd be proud of, my grandkids could be proud of, things my great grandkids could be proud of, and have a legacy. So I've always approached it that way, and I think with that, you tend to be more at peace with the results of things, or what happens with things, because if you've done your job and you've handed it off, to the powers that be, whether in Dre's case, if it goes into the vault and never comes out, goes into the vault and never comes out, to a record label that shelves it, to a record label that fumbles it. There's songs that come out that I know that could have been better or bigger songs, but they weren't properly marketed or promoted and things of that nature. I just don't worry about it. And so if we catch one, like, Tell Your Friends to me I love the record that me and The Weeknd did, but I never thought about it as necessarily a single. So when it, made it a single in a video and did really well, that was just like a blessing in disguise, because it was never something that I thought it was a dope vibe. And I thought it really was a dope record for the album, because his album was so like this. And I give him this one record that's like this. So I thought it was dope in the scope of a record. So when I heard it was going to be a single and they were shooting a video to it, I was like blown away. And even then, I didn't have any expectations of any commercial success. So when it had commercial success, it's like, oh shit, okay. Bound, on the other hand, is different. I think I knew with Bound that, because the record was one way, and to me, sometimes I call it a release. So if you have a record and it's going this whole way, and all of a sudden you give it this release, and Bound was that moment on Yeezus. That's why it was played at the end of the concerts and stuff. It was this release of like, it's, your people love Kanye for these soul samples and so on and so forth. And you have this record of all this other stuff. Then all of a sudden it gives you one of those, that release. And I think in that case, I felt like I knew Bound would be big,
Yeah.
So sometimes sometimes you have absolutely no clue. But my point is, you just got to let it, you just got to let it fly, and then what happens happens. You can be disappointed, and and you just don't want to stagnate on it and be bitter, because you trust me, probably more disappointments than successes, to be honest with you. But you just move on. Just move on. It's out of your hands.
Yeah. And that's one of the hard things I think people don't understand about creative process, is that you can do so much that doesn't ever amount to anything. But those times that it does, it's like, man, that's the best feeling.
And you think of like a painter, like, like a Basquiat, right? He had all this art, and, a lot of it wasn't appreciated when he was alive. You know what I mean? So it's like, he never really, people were checking for him, but not like what became of it, Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's like, sometimes you catch up to it. I think of someone like a Madlib too, right? Where Madlib hasn't been like necessarily a mainstream guy, but to me, he's like the Picasso of what we do. You know what I mean? Like, or the Basquiat of what we do. Dilla. You know what I mean? These guys that are, but in terms of like hit records and things of that nature, they may not have had all that kind of stuff, but and sometimes they're not really revered, sadly, until after they pass or something like that, or later in their career of people. Because I can remember times where when I was coming up, and I talking about, I brought Madlib up with like you mainstream artists, and he'd be like, oh, he's a weirdo. Oh, you like that weirdo and stuff, you know what I mean? But now he's heralded like,
yeah,
I love that. I love that.
Shout out to the Loot Pack as always. Yes. But with all the business stuff too, you have your workshop company that you're building. So how, when, and why did you want to get that going?
Same thing. Reason I wanted to do this masterclass with our art, just to try to provide some opportunity and information, just share it. Like, really, the main premise behind workshop was to bring resources to artists where they need it the most. I think right now the nature of the artist to resources is corrupted. It's based on data and metrics, and I understand why, because the majors are playing a market share game. They're not like back in the 60s or something, right? Where just people were creating cool labels and signing cool artists and you know, taking a chance on an artist and this and that. And the purity of it. These major labels are not that anymore. They're these big conglomerates and so on and so forth. So they're fighting a market share game. So if they can see a TikTok record blowing up, they can do the analytics on it and project what income it's going to be. You know, that's what they're looking for in terms of signing. I wanted to create a place where someone could still walk in a room, press play, and be, you know, we'd be blown away on it and do a deal because of, you know, the goosebumps we got. You know what I mean? But also that Berry Gordy part to it too, where there's no talent development artists. I want to bring in talent development and also music education. That's the big thing with me. It's I want these artists to leave, not only come in the door, go through this process of talent development, be these much better artists, but also much better informed artists. Because I think of every artist as the CEO of their own, you know, of their own company, so to speak. You know, you know, I have an artist, Troy, like, you know, she's the CEO of Troy Inc. in my mind, you know.
Yeah, because I think people forget you're the CEO of your own life and your own body. So,
Yeah.
you
So
know, that's got to extend to your work as well, if
very much so.
to fully maximize things.
Yeah, because I've had a lot of artists that tell, you know, come in and, oh, I just want to focus on the music and da da. I was like, no, if you're gonna do this and you're gonna do it in the music business, you may not think you need, but you know, and obviously because you can get a great team, but you still need to be aware. You still need to be what's going on, you know, because that's how you get taken advantage of, you know.
Yeah, and I think exposure has a lot to do with all these things because you've had the benefit of being in different cities, being around a lot of
Yeah.
different creative people with different levels of experience and
Yep.
success. So, for you, as you started to travel in particular, what did that teach you about yourself and about business?
Travel meant the world to everything to me because I grew up in Boston and you know, my mother was in DC in the DC area. And so I went back and forth between Boston and DC. But outside of that, and my mother living in the Virgin Islands for a bit, I never really went anywhere. I didn't have parents that really like, they weren't big travelers. They, you know, I think I went to Orlando for Disney World or something like that. And you know, we had family in Bermuda. I really did not travel much. So I knew there was a world out there, you know. And so when I started having the means to be able to do that, I immediately started boom, London, boom, here, you know, going wherever I could go. And you get exposed to people who expose you to their, you know, the information they have, you know, whether it's their culture, whether it's their music, you know, or musical influences, which may be different than yours. And each time you do it, you just learn more. Just learn, you just soak up more information and just more. I mean, even to this day, like, you know, I would say much of the influence of my company is a woman who owns a company called what's the name of her company? A French woman who owns her and her partner own an amazing company. They've got Gestaltacine and those guys in Brodensky, Savoir Faire. And there's a Japanese company founded by this guy Hiro called LDH. Those are huge influences on workshop. You know what I mean? And that's from spending time with these brilliant people, spending time and hearing their approach and their thoughts and things of that nature. So I'm a sponge of it all, you know. So that that is who I am today, and I wouldn't be that. Like I go to Norway on the 21st. I just got back from speaking in New Zealand and Australia. That will always be a part of J Pope as long as J Pope has the ability to do that.
Hmm, that's
You know?
impressive.
Yeah.
So, travel's one thing, making music's another thing, being an A&R's another thing. But how has all of this tied back into you producing? Like all these different things, how have they affected your actual production, would you say?
Um, you can't help, you know, I would like to say, you know, the production is the production, but that's not true. They do factor in because you start I think of like it's almost like RZA was talking to me one day and we talked about, you know, in terms of I don't know why martial arts came back up, but we brought up martial arts again and he used some analogies for martial arts. But essentially it's like if you've got like, you know, how in martial arts you get the different color belts or whatever. It's like same thing. It's like going to another level because you've added this other skill set to you, so you incorporate it. So now it's like you bring all this information you have, and that can't help but not go in the studio with you. You know what I mean? Even if you didn't want to bring it in the studio with you, it's coming in the studio with you. The A&R hat is coming with you. The traveling the world part, working with these different people and hearing these different sounds and sonics and da da da. That's all coming in the studio with you. Now that can be a lot for an artist sometimes, because sometimes I'll get with an artist who just want what they want, and it can be very, very, basic, if you will, and that's fine too, because you have to be able to work with the artists that you choose to work with. But in general, I really want the artists that are like open minded and let me bring all this stuff in the room with me, you know, which is why I've never really had the inclination to make my own album until now. And I think that's because I have all this information.
So what's it going to be? Or are you going to really work on it, you think?
Oh yeah, I am. I've started it. It'll be my version of, like it won't sound anything like Dr. Dre or The Chronic, but my version of it, you know what I mean? A producer album with features.
Back on the block.
Yeah, Quincy Jones, exactly. So, it'll be my version of that. My version of that too will be same thing. It'll be, influences from all around the world. I will say this, the one thing I want to bring back is because trap music to me is such a mid-tempo kind of tempo that I want to bring back tempo. I love the way that like Thrill's music makes me feel. I think in this day and age, a lot of sadness coming out of a pandemic, a lot of depression, a lot of economic struggle, strife. There's a place I go to in Detroit called Spotlight, where they don't let any trap music play. They play disco, they play house, they play tropical, they play, 90s R&B. But I see people's smiles on their face and dancing and having a good time. So that influenced me, and that felt, like, okay, if I want to make something, so tempo is, I would say, would be the one thing that's going to be on my project. But other than that, it's going to be some Che shit. Some Che Fela.
Being from Maryland and going to a lot of go-go concerts over the years, I understand the importance of that. Yes.
This has been great. This has been one of them. This is so much more than, I'm glad we got to talk, some about Masterclass. This has been a life conversation. So
no, I've always wanted to talk to you because I knew not everything about you, of course, but a lot. Yeah. But I've always been so intrigued of, like I was saying, traveling all these different roads, how it worked, because in a different way, I've done it journalistically and writing wise, and even some of the music stuff I've done. Mm-hmm. But like for you, I was just always like, man, that's so interesting to me that you've been able to do that. So hopefully we can do more again. But anyway.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you. I think my life is just a testament to like getting out of your comfort zone, though. You know what I mean? Saying yes to things where I know a lot of my peers would probably have said no, or not done because it's a little left of center, or it's a little different for you, it's a little uncomfortable. I gave a lecture in Lithuania. You know what I mean? Like, these things that and I think my willingness to explore these things has really paid. Is that investment in that kind of stuff has just paid off. Time and time again.
Do you think too, because do you think having a Caribbean heritage might have something to do with that too?
It's not even that I even have Caribbean heritage, because my mom's not from the Caribbean. I do have family in Bermuda, but my family is originally from like Virginia, and my grandmother's side is Virginia, and my grandfather's side is Alabama. So Southern Black folks that migrated north during the Great Migration and all that. But I think it's more so just work ethic and not being, I didn't come from means. We weren't poor, but I didn't come from means by any means. I came from the inner city of Boston. I had to deal with everything that everybody deals with in the inner city. And I think in my case, my father and my grandfather had a really great work ethic. I think they instilled that in me as well. And I think I was ambitious. I think I was ambitious in terms of like, once I realized that this was possible to like this life, to like live a life making music and traveling the world. Once I realized it was possible, there was no stopping me. It was like going back to what you were saying, resilience. It was almost not even resilience, because yes, stuff would get tough. You know, that's just the nature of the entertainment business. Resilience when it got tough, but relentless. You know, relentless. You know,
That is the key to the game. You can't give up because,
yeah,
you know, it's like if you want to be in the game, you have to play.
yeah.
And once you stop playing, you're not in the game.
You're not in the game, and you have to find out. You know, Illmind is a perfect example. This producer Illmind I work with, and
Mhm.
you know, I gave, you know, not to say I was the only one, because it was he's talented, so he's got multiple opportunities. But he's somebody I gave an opportunity back in like 2012 on like the Good Music album. You know, I got his track, one of his tracks in the mix. I just saw him like a couple of days ago, and he had this massive camp with all these, and he's giving all these, you know, he's paying it forward to all these songwriters and up and coming producers and stuff. And we just talked about it, and he was like, "Man, you gave me that opportunity in 2012." And he's like, "I'm just trying, my whole career has been just trying to pay it forward." And he's pivoted different ways and this and that. And it's when I see these people that I've worked with, or youngsters I've helped along the way or whatever, you know, and you see them doing their thing, you know, that's what it's all about, you know?
Clearly. And
Yeah.
that's, I think, led to sustained success for you. So
Yeah.
congratulations on that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Che Pope, man, we really appreciate you coming through to Unique Access Entertainment. Anything else you want to add before we go?
No, go check out that master class, because it's, you know, I'm not, you know, I'm one of those best kept secrets, I feel like, in the business. And I'm not, you know, this brand name, but I just feel like I know a lot because I've been in so many circles, you know what I mean? From getting a tutelage with Teddy Riley, from getting a tutelage with, you know, KG and these different people and Lord Finesse, and then getting my master class with Dr. Dre, you know, getting my doctorate with Kanye. You know what I mean? So I feel like I have this plethora of information and ideologies to share. So I just hope people really would, you know, go check out the master class, because I think it's a lot of information for a little bit of money.
And I want you to listen real close to me. I'm going to ask you some real simple questions, and I want some real simple answers. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yes, I understand.
You said that you couldn't have possibly been at the crime scene at 11:15 because you were in the bookstore buying my audio book and my hardcover book at 11:15 when the crime scene occurred in Soren's book.
The history of gangster rap.
So you couldn't have been at the crime scene because you were buying the books.
Right. At 11:15, I was at the bookstore at 11:15, and when I bought the books and accidentally left them at the store.
So at 11:15, you couldn't have been at the crime scene because you were buying books, right?
At 11:15, when I was leaving, it was some people coming in, and I forgot to grab.
But you don't remember who
what they look
people,
like.
what they look like or nothing, right?
No.
So, at 12:15, you in the bookstore buying my audio book and hardcover book and Soren's book at 12:15. So you couldn't have been at the scene because you were buying the books, right?
Yeah. At 12 exactly. At 12:15 exactly, I was at the bookstore.
Now you see. You know you done fucked up.
Which
No,
one?
first you said you were at the bookstore at 11:15, and then you said it was 12:15. You know you done fucked up. He fucked up.
Yeah, he fucked up.
He fucked up.
Man, you confusing me, man.
So, you get my book, my audio book, 40 years, and Soren's book, History of Gangster Rap, and if you don't, you know you done fucked up, right?
Man, the more those cops ask me questions, the more I wish I bought them motherfucking books.